Hello friend, John Dalton here for the Emergence podcast, where we go into love, consciousness and the mystery. And in this episode we're going into getting focused, kindness, movement, hiking, peace, silence, attention, significance and ease. In response to the question I pose on the Instagram feed, what's the biggest challenge you're facing at the moment in your spiritual life? This person wrote, fear and loss, mostly fear. Everything passing away and I don't want to get old and die. And I'm tired. But I've so much to be grateful for, so there's hope. I really want to live, but I can tell I am slowly passing away. I'm trying to fight it, but it's no use. It scares me to death. I know it's just a normal human thing that everyone goes through, and I'm trying not to hate it like so many people who tell me that growing old is awful, horrible, and that it sucks. And then straight away after that message, they sent another little message that says, just after I sent this, my brain started playing that Trooper song. We're here for a good time, not a long time. The sun doesn't shine every day. It happens to be a very sunny and beautiful afternoon day today. I'm going outside. Thanks for inviting me to write this stuff. I hope you're well and having a good day. Thank you. So there's a lot in this question. I feel for this person because it can be a bit of a shock when you suddenly realize you're getting older. I haven't had that, I have to say, because I've been very conscious. I've been blessed that I've been very conscious from a young age, like my teens, from around about the time I started getting funneled into a career of some kind. I began to go, this isn't important. I know this isn't important. And like, what is important? And for me, it was the thing of, well, what can I take with me? And money, status, all those kind of things. No, they didn't seem that important. They didn't seem like I could take them with me. And I was very conscious from a very early age, 12, 13, something like that, of I'm going to die. This isn't a never-ending thing. At some point, it's going to come to an end. And I want to feel like I got the most out of it when I am dying. As I'm dying, I don't want to be having regrets. A lot of people don't seem to have that. And I'm saying that because I'm just from looking around. People are very involved. They really believe they're going to live forever. They sort of keep going. And then suddenly they get the shock of like, oh my God. And some people don't get it until they're dying, that they kind of realize what's happened. And that's very sad, but that's the way I've observed it with people. And really, this hasn't got anything got to do with getting old. This is to do with consciousness, as far as I can see it. Because the sooner you realize that you're going to die, the sooner you can get focused on what's important to you. And I don't mean you're going to die in a fatalistic thing, but that this thing that we're in has a beginning, a middle, and an end to it. Just like sitting down to watch a movie. You don't think the movie's going to go on forever. You don't spend the whole time kind of going, oh, it's going to end. But you know it's coming. And in the same way, there's an end to this particular experience. What happens afterwards? I don't know. Nobody knows. So even though this person, it's difficult, it's great. It's a great opportunity when your body lets you know, hey, we're changing. I'm not going to be here forever. This whole thing is not going to be here forever. That's a time for celebration because you're becoming conscious of what's happening in your life and what's real. It's so funny the way we get shocked about it because it's like the most obvious thing. You just have to look around. Nature is full of it. Things are being born, living and dying all around you. Like we have it with our pets. They just don't live for as long as we do. So we get reminders all over the place. So when it finally comes to you and you go, oh, I'm getting older, because when you're in your 20s, you can eat whatever you like, you can drink whatever you like. Your body has like incredible recuperative powers. But then you sort of get onto your 40s and things start to change. And the great thickening occurs, as I like to think of it. And you realize, oh, I can't eat like a 20-year-old anymore. I have to change. I have to respond. And then as it keeps going, you kind of go, oh, okay, now I'm one of those people, Because the really funny thing about people who are older is it's the first time they've been older. They've never been older before. They've looked at old people, the number of memes you see of people going, "Oh, I looked in the mirror and I'm that old person." But that's because it's the first time they've been old. And it's always the first time for everyone. It's not like you have any previous experience of getting older. It's new for everybody. So you look, if you're younger and you're looking around at the sort of 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds, they're in shock. They're like, "Oh my God, now I'm a 60-year-old. Oh my God, now I'm a 70-year-old." As I say, I didn't have that, thankfully, because from the time I was a teenager, I was very conscious of what was happening, and that this is important, and I'm going to get the most out of it, and I'm going to get what's of value. And money and status and politics and all the stuff that everybody seems to take so seriously, I don't know about that, because I can't take it with me. That's the way I've always looked at it, is what can I take with me? And there isn't anything really I take with me into deep dreamless sleep. So I'm probably not going to be able to take anything with me. But it seemed to me that consciousness, and focusing my life around consciousness, that seemed like pretty as close as I could get to something I could take with me. And the more I became conscious, the more I felt like the things that I was discovering were things that I would consider as I was on my deathbed. That's assuming I get to be in a bed. Which would be nice. So it's one of the functions of getting older is, if you haven't been thinking about this, it starts to make you think about it. But it doesn't matter what age you are. If you can come to this, if you can kind of go, what's important to me? What's really important to me? What can I bring with me? What can I focus on? Getting older won't be a shock to you. And certainly getting older for me hasn't been a shock. It's just been a continuation of what I've already been doing and engaged in. And what's nice is that the more I've focused on consciousness and the more I've oriented my life around consciousness, the more interesting it's got. So the older I get, the more interesting my life gets. And as I've said before, like, having big projects is a great thing to do as you get older. Not to do less, but to do more. But to do more of the things that you're passionate about, of course. But to take on big, audacious things is very helpful. So this person seems to have actually figured it out for themselves. And I think this is more of a report than I don't think there's any question here. Because they kind of went, well, the sun is shining and it doesn't always shine, so I'm going to go out and enjoy it. That's kind of it. That's like one of the more important things, is that the sun shines, and when the sun shines, to enjoy it and to forget about the future. I know that contradicts what I said, but to forget about the future and come into the moment, because you can ruin the moment by thinking, oh, that's it now, the best days of my life are behind me and it's all downhill from here. It doesn't have to be. You don't have to die from something. That's an important thing to think about. Do you want to die from something, or do you just want to die? Meaning, do you want to be afraid of getting some terrible thing and like, oh, I'm going to have to, I'm going to get some sort of cancer or some sort of horrible neurological disease or so, I can't just die. I have to die from something. That's not true. You can just die. You don't have to die from something. You can make that your goal. You aim towards just dying when you die. People used to die of old age all the time. Yeah, I know you can kind of go, yeah, well, that's because they were undiagnosed. But there was a sort of a naturalness to it than dying from something. Very few people die of old age these days. They always die from something. So you can avoid that. You can make that something to aim towards, And you can live until you die. A lot of people, when they realize they're getting older, and particularly with the retirement structure, as soon as they retire, they just hang around waiting to die. I remember one old lady telling me about herself and her friends who used to meet for coffee every couple of weeks. She said, oh yeah, well, we all know we're in the departure lounge. That's not living. That's not a way to live. Die in mid-stride. Die on your feet. not on your knees or not on the couch. And I don't mean physically, I mean in your spirit. Die with your spirit up and ready to go, ready for the next thing. This is an issue like for lots of people now, because there's more people going into getting on in life now than ever before. We've got a huge infertility problem, so there's not as many people going to be born. So we've got this wedge in the middle of lots of people who are going through, my generation, they're all freaked out now because they're in their 60s. And it's completely understandable because they're unprepared for it. It's not like everything in their life has not prepared them for this. So it's very understandable how shocking it is. But it's happening for more and more people. And there's lots of things you can do about it. And it starts with kind of going, I haven't got that much time left, so I'm going to make the most of it. Okay, I'm going to take on the big, audacious projects. I know I'm tired, but a lot of the time I'm tired because I've been just doing what I thought I was supposed to do. And now I'm realizing I didn't have to do any of that stuff. Okay, and don't get into regrets or anything like that. It's all served you. It's all served you to now. And now you're listening to me. And I'm saying to you, throw off the old shackles and just go for it and start to explode with vitality, because it's in there. All the things that are weighing you down are just to do with decisions that you made in the past. And you'll be amazed how much vitality comes into your body when you let things go that are not true to you. So take on the big projects. Make it your goal in life not to die from something, to just die when it's time. And you'll know because you'll get in tune with your life and your body and what your body's doing. When you look at it, your body is just a collection of cells. It's a collection of cells that are held together by a coherent field, much like iron filings that form a particular shape because of the magnet that's under the paper. The magnet is the coherent field or the blueprint, and what organizes the blueprint is your being, the essence of who you are. So your cells can pretty much do whatever they're told to do. So I wouldn't take your body too seriously. It's got a rhythm to it. Everything's got a rhythm to it. One of my craniosacral teachers and friends, he described it beautifully. He said, we think we are born, we live, and we die, which isn't actually correct. We are born, and we're born, and we're born, and we're born, and we're born, and we die. And that's my experience. That's what I've observed in myself and in other people. We're continually changing. So I think this person is in tune with that, because they're talking about the sun coming out and it's a lovely day. And to enjoy the lovely days when they're there. So if you're listening to this and you're getting on a bit and these things are starting to dawn on you, celebrate. Celebrate that you've become conscious that this is a passing thing. And what's important to you, what's really important to you. Don't sacrifice your spirit for what feels like comfort, but it isn't really. Leave the job, leave the marriage, leave the country. If it takes away your life, if it's making you dead while you're alive, nothing's worth that. Change, let it change, go on the big adventure. If you're only realizing now that you've been kind of sleepwalking through your life, that's fine. Go on the big adventure now. Doesn't matter what age you are. Let the vitality up and let it out. As I say, I like getting letters, so feel free to write to me. You can contact me through all the usual kind of ways, but if you want to email me, it's john@furtheremergence.com. I send out friendly notes every Sunday, a combination of writing and a few other things. I think they're good. Hard to know because I write them. But I think they're good. And the feedback I get is good. So yeah, you can sign up for them at the website, furtheremergence.com. If you're interested in training with me, I have a couple of different trainings. They fit together. There's meditation, then dealing with the psychic world, and then there's a kind of overarching one, which is called Space for the Mystery, which is a chance to meditate with me and the other people. And if you've never meditated before, you can come along to that. Or you can start with the meditation one. You can do whatever way you like. But they're all there on the website, furtheremergence.com. Now, let's have a look at the memes on the Further Emergence Instagram feed. I didn't write this one, but it's very good. It's a big circle, and written on the circle it says someone's life, and then there's a little dot in the circle, and it says what you know about it. And then the banner is why you should be kind to people. And it's great, isn't it? It's just a real graphic indication of how much of a person's life you see. It's tiny. You think about your own inner life, the richness of your inner life, the drama, it's like an opera, feels like it inside me sometimes, a very dramatic opera sometimes. And how little of that you convey as you walk around. Because we're not children anymore. When you see a child, do you ever get that feeling when you're looking at a child of how disturbing it is to see them being that free and open? This part of you is like pining a little bit for it, like, oh, look how free they are. And then another part of you goes, they don't know what's coming. If they knew, they would not behave like that, because I didn't know, and I know what happened to me, and that's why I don't behave like that anymore. We learn not to be open. We learn to shut down. We learn all these things. And we walk around presenting the safest expression of ourselves, the expression of ourselves that's going to cause the least amount of trouble for us as we walk around. And it's tiny. It's a tiny little expression of the vastness of what we are on the inside. And you know that for yourself, and everybody else is doing the same thing. And you know how you've been heartbroken, and you can walk around and nobody would know. You can have a 10-minute conversation with somebody and they haven't a clue how heartbroken you are. Now, you know that for you, so you can be sure everybody else is doing the same thing. And that's why it's just default to kindness. Just default to that person is way more heartbroken than I've ever been. Doesn't matter if they're smiling their head off and they're happy and they look happy and everything looks fantastic. I can tell you from working with people one-to-one that everybody's got a lot that they're dealing with. And they don't show it. So, yeah, be kind. Next one is a really nice quote from Thich Nhat Hanh. And he says, when we walk like we're rushing, we print anxiety and sorrow on the earth. We have to walk in a way that we only print peace and serenity on the earth. Be aware of the contact between your feet and the earth. Walk as if you are kissing the earth with your feet. That's beautiful. When I read that first, it changed the way. It still comes back to me, actually. Not as much as I'd like. When I'm moving around and walking, I noticed when I started barefoot hiking, it changed the way I walked, because I didn't have this big, thick layer of rubber between my foot and the ground. So I was much more in contact with the ground, and I was much more conscious of the textures, and it just changed the way I moved. I remember going hiking with somebody after I had started. So I was in my bare feet and they were in their boots, and they reminded me of a bulldozer. They were just like, that's what it felt like. And I was kind of going, God, I must have walked like that too, Now, I'm not saying you should go barefoot hiking. Well, I recommend it for sure. But this idea of becoming conscious of the way you're moving and realizing that the earth is, or what's below your feet is receiving the way you're moving. That's very good. And then making it your focus to move as if you're kissing the earth with your feet. That's beautiful. Such a beautiful way of moving. If everybody did that, if everybody walked like that, just that, I think that would make a huge change to everything. And this next one is a kind of a follow-on. It's a quote from John Muir, who was a big conservationist, naturalist. He was very responsible for a lot of the national parks in America, very instrumental in getting that off the ground. So he's talking about hiking. He says, hiking, I don't like either the word or the thing. People ought to saunter in the mountains, not hike. Do you know the origin of that word, saunter? It's a beautiful word. Way back in the Middle Ages, people used to go on pilgrimages to the Holy Land. And when people in the villages through which they passed asked where they were going, they would reply, à la Sentière, to the Holy Land. And so they became known as Sentieres or Saunterers. Now, these mountains are our Holy Land, and we ought to saunter through them reverently, not hike through them. And it's really funny. I only came across this particular quote from John Muir recently, but I go for a walk most mornings, and you could say it's a kind of a meditation. I'm very conscious of myself, how I feel. I don't just take off. I check in with my heart. I try and let my heart lead me as I'm walking along. And I became conscious of this kind of like hurriedness and this head down, I'm going for my walk now. And I started to slow down more and more. And this word came to mind. I stopped going for walks and I started going for saunters. And it was just in my mind. This was just between me and me. I don't think I mentioned it to anybody, that I was thinking of it in terms of sauntering. And if I was sauntering, I was going at the right speed. And then I come across this quote. It's beautiful. And I didn't even know about this thing about the pilgrims and the sentiers. Beautiful. So yeah, this totally resonates with me. And I pass it on to you and encourage you to start sauntering. It's beautiful. Next one's a quote from Maria Montessori. Now, the surname there might be familiar to you, Montessori schools. They were set up by Maria Montessori. Very interesting person, way ahead of her time. I always think of her as being responsible for putting little chairs in schools. Before her, apparently, all the chairs in the schools were adult size. Now, I could be wrong about that, but my sister trained in Montessori, and she told me that. It makes sense, these little chairs. So she's a very interesting woman, lots of interesting things to say. This is what she has to say about peace. Everyone talks about peace, but no one teaches peace. In this world, you're educated for competition, and competition is the beginning of every war. When he will educate himself for cooperation and to offer each other solidarity, that day he will be educating himself for peace. That's a brilliant quote. And it speaks to the roots of conflict and points towards, if we don't start being conscious now, and if we don't start passing that on to our kids, and if we don't just routinely teach our kids what we were taught, nothing's going to change. We have to change ourselves. We have to become more as conscious as we can. We have to make that our lives' mission, now more than ever, to become more conscious. And we have to infuse that consciousness into the kids. We have to stop passing on our bigotry, our prejudice, our hatred, we have to stop passing on our unconsciousness to the kids. It's the only way it's going to stop. It's like being in a big, long collision. The previous car hits the next car, the next car hits the next car. By the time it gets to you, are you going to put the brakes on and stop it going forward? That's the thing we're all faced with. How we respond, how we deal with what we pass on to the kids. That's where it's going to stop. That's what she's saying. That's how we come to peace. Peace inside us first, and then it radiates out to the kids, to each other, everywhere. I didn't write this next one, or Arnold did. I'm not sure who that is, but it's very good. It says, "So, if you're too tired to speak, sit next to me because I too am fluent in silence." Who hasn't been in a situation that wouldn't be so soothed by having somebody say that to you? I know I would. I want to meet that person. That's the person I want to sit beside. The person who is quite comfortable in silence. And it's a great gift to give to other people. And you can do it without being overt, because sometimes people get into silence, a bit like staring contests. But you can hold the silence inside you when you're meeting people. And you can give them the space to recognize that they don't have to say things, that you kind of get them. And that you're okay to be quiet with them. It doesn't work with everybody. Some people, it freaks them out completely. and they start talking even faster. But as a general rule, the more comfortable you are with your own silence, the more space you give for other people. Because really, we receive each other as beings first, and then the words come afterwards. So when you are conscious of the silence and you're okay with it, you're acknowledging their being first, and then whatever the words are. And that's beautiful. Didn't write the next one. It's very good, though. It says, your attention is your power. When we focus on things that frustrate or annoy us, we give that situation or person our power. You can take it back at any moment. Take your attention and place it somewhere that feels good. And that's really helpful for right now, because you could add fear to that. When we focus on things that frustrate or annoy us or make us afraid, we give that situation or person our power back. That's not to say we don't care. Of course we care. Of course you care. But your attention is your power. And if you give it away to things that are fearful or distressing, beyond the recognition of what is there, not to deny it or not to try and escape it, see it, let your heart break, let it break right open, and then acknowledge the lovely day, acknowledge your kids, acknowledge all the great things that you have. Because your attention is your power, and it's your choice. You don't have to watch to care. You can care. You know you care. Give your attention to the beautiful things, to the goodness in your life, inside yourself, and keep your own power. Didn't write this one. I think it's great though, because it's really simple. It just says someone out there feels better because you exist. And that's true. And it's probably more than one person. But sometimes when it gets very dark, just one person is enough. One person feeling better because you exist can be enough to get you through that dark time. And it's true. There's always at least one person that feels better because you exist. And it's really important to remember that when things are dark. And then the last one is more appropriate and needed now than ever. It says, what if it turns out way better than you could have ever imagined? Because the future is all in our imagination anyway. And you can look at history and you can look at what's happening and you can imagine a trajectory. But then you can also allow the possibility that anything could happen. And what one do you want? What future do you want? And just pick the one you want and focus on that. What if it turns out way better than you could have ever imagined? That's not to deny what is happening, but don't let it point you into a future that you don't want. Because the future is not written. It doesn't exist yet. But what can exist is your fear and your anxiety and all these other things. And you can let all of them go. You don't need to have them. You can focus on a future you want. And this idea of what if it turns out way better than you can imagine. So imagine pretty good. And then maybe it can turn out even better. All right, that's all I have for you this week. I trust you're well. I trust you're of good cheer. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.